Tonight on the line, hit us with your best God with your host, Jimmy Snow, and featured guest, John Gleason. This is The Line.
The question I have back for you, though, is you had said that you do believe that there is something after, and I think I'm most interested to find out why.
Why? Because, everything has a creator, so why wouldn't this giant, vast universe, this world we live in, have a creator? That's the
Except
way I
for
feel
that,
about it. Whether it's
the phrase that you just said is, it's one of those things that I was saying is an axiom that people accept as an axiom despite the fact that it's not. You said the phrase everything is a creator, but if you actually take away everything that isn't created by humans, or let's just say any other intelligent animal, you have a tremendous amount of the universe that right now we don't know that there is a creator for. So when you say everything has a creator, that's only true if it's only true if it comes around on itself. So rocks, sand, all the Mars, never been, well, Mars has now been touched by people, but let's go with like Venus, Pluto, all these planets, stars, and things that don't have an apparent or obvious creator. So the word everything doesn't work until you just say, okay, no, actually I accept everything as a creator. Things that are created have creators, and we notice that they're different from things around them because they contrast from things around them that don't appear to be created.
Now, the things that you would say that don't have a creator, that don't have an obvious creator, where do you think that comes from?
Well, if I can jump in here real quick, I usually try to go with an easy example to understand, and that would be like the water cycle. Now, to ask me, well, who do I think created like rain? I would have to say nobody created rain because it's part of the water cycle. You have water that evaporates up into the atmosphere, and at some point it cools down enough to where it turns into rain droplets and it falls on the earth. And that's pretty much the water cycle, simply put, and it doesn't need a creator in it. And I'm kind of curious, do you see a need for a creator in the water cycle?
I mean, I don't necessarily see a need for it, but I do believe that there was something that, or someone or something out of our imagination or out of our, what our brains could grasp, that there is a creator. I feel like there is. I mean, I'm not trying to change anybody's opinion, but I feel like there is, and I'm personally, I'm right now going through that process trying to figure out who or what is that creator.
Paco, the person whose mind you should be trying to change is your own toward whatever the truth is. And so the reason why I'm asking you these questions is there is a chance that either you or I are correct. There's also a good chance that we're both wrong, but that whatever the answer is, there's a chance one of us is correct. And if it's you who's correct, I want to know why you believe that so I can adopt it for myself according to the ways that I accept other things as true. And if it turns out I'm correct, I would hope, but I can't choose this for you, that your values are such that you want to believe as many true things as possible. So as far as not trying to change anyone's mind, I think everyone should always be trying to change their own mind toward whatever is true, or once you have discovered something that appears to be true, make sure that you understand it adequately, especially for what not everybody needs to understand all the ins and outs of physics, but for whatever you need. Regarding this, I still haven't heard why you believe, besides perhaps just this concept of you can't understand how it could work without, and creating the idea that it has to be something beyond our imagination. Then why would you even bother trying to suspect an answer? Because if it's beyond our imagination, you're basically saying you will definitely get it wrong, whatever answer you come up with. So those are my two questions for you.
Well, I feel like every religion has its own wrongs because it was created by humans. But at the very end, it has its core of a creator, of a God. Everyone has their own interpretation, but everyone believes in a creator. Now,
no, not everyone believes in a creator.
In some way, because we're humans. We're supposed to be wrong. That's how we create things. But I feel like God is this divine being that is just perfect. Now that's just the way I feel, mainly because of the way I was raised and because of how I feel. There's something inside you that you just feel that way. Maybe some people don't have it, but I do.
Is feeling a good reason to believe something? Sorry, John. Go ahead.
That's okay.
Well, I mean, yeah, of course, because we all have, I believe, we have a soul. So in that soul, we have feelings, and on top of that, we have a brain that's more reasonable. But I mean, I really
wait, Paco. We gotta hang on. You believe that our brain is where reason comes from and feelings come from our soul? Is that what I'm to understand?
I mean, as far as what religion has taught me over time, yeah.
Okay. So I guess here's the question I'm going to have for you, and then I'm going to provide some information that apparently is going to blow your goddamn mind. But we'll start off with this.
Yeah, I'll take it.
If you are wrong, do you want to know you're wrong?
Yeah, of course.
So I would very much suggest searching for answers to your questions, not just from religious sources. Because when you say feelings come from your soul and reason comes from your brain, first of all, even without the emotions we have, our brains are incredibly unreasonable. We have to learn how to dismiss things or work against things like inherent biases and such. But feelings come from your brain also. You literally have centers of your brain that activate as you're experiencing emotions. And so even when a person says they are experiencing spiritual communion and they're feeling something, we can actually track what parts of the brain are activating in an MRI. We can see what's lighting up and where is lighting up. And sometimes it's really, really fascinating that we experience these emotions and for some reason they're happening in the mathematical part of our brain. Sometimes the way these things happen are fascinating where they are. But there is no demonstration of a soul. There is a scientific demonstration of emotions, and emotions and feelings do happen inside the brain. Were you not aware of that, Paco?
No, I was I was aware, yeah, that our brain functions that way, but who's to say that our brain isn't a part of our soul? I mean, I'm not saying that a soul is a specific organ, but our soul could be all of us from head to toe.
Well, then the word is meaningless. Why use it? If it can be anything, it is nothing. Sorry, go ahead, John.
But it's not anything outside of our body.
John, go ahead.
The soul isn't anything outside of our bodies?
If our soul is with us, wouldn't it be with our body?
Well, so the common idea of what people think of as a soul is really just your sense of self. And I mean, that comes from a complex enough central nervous system like we have. So, I mean, there's no scientific or empirical evidence of a soul. And a soul is really a supernatural thing that exists outside of like our physical reality. At least the concept of it is. And so since it exists outside of reality, I mean, you can't really say that it exists inside of reality. I don't know. It's kind of a weird thing, but I do want you to, I'm kind of curious for people with depression, whether clinical or otherwise, what do you think affects them? Do you think that they just have a bad soul, or there's something wrong with their soul, or is that a chemical imbalance in the brain?
No, I feel like when it comes to depression, it's just trauma over time that affects the person's brain. I don't think soul has anything to do with, with depression. I think depression and feelings of sadness and all that come from the brain due to trauma over time. Because as babies, we're born pretty happy, and then over time we get beat down by life.
I mean, I don't know. Have you ever heard a baby being born? It sounds like you're killing it.
They're not super happy.
Huh? I'm sorry?
No. So the shock, the physical shock of a baby being born, like going from an environment that is like 98.6 degrees to like room temperature is pretty shocking, for the baby. That's why when the baby is born and they start crying, they're like really cold, and it's a really weird experience if you try to imagine yourself being born again. But what I want to highlight here though is the very big distinction that you've made here is that you claim that the emotions of sadness and everything that you associate with depression comes from our mind, but at the same time, you said earlier that emotions come from, it was either our heart or our soul. And so I'm just wondering, how do you rationalize those two things? Because they both can't be true. Either emotions come from our soul or our heart, or emotions are created by our brain through chemical reactions. So I'm just kind of wondering, how do you rationalize that?
Well, the way I rationalize it really is when we are born, and you were talking about being born, we don't remember any of that. So we can't remember the trauma of that. No human being remembers being born. But over time, we experience bad stuff, and we go through depression and all that. But I'm pretty sure, I don't know if you guys, I'm pretty new to the show. I don't know if you guys have family that has babies, but babies overall are pretty happy. And if you're born happy, wouldn't there be a reason for that? Like,
have you had a baby?
Yeah, Paco, you are
a baby born sad.
You are incredibly generalizing. And in fact, the emotional state of a baby is extremely simplified compared to us as we get older, to the point where their fight or flight reactions and their tendency to scream can be triggered by minor things. You're generalizing because you've seen babies laugh and that makes you feel good. And those videos are really fun to watch. I want to get back to the soul stuff, though, because the baby thing is just something we just aren't going to agree on, and it's not important to the conversation anyway. You did create a dichotomy where you said the soul is where the emotions are and the brain is more reasonable. So it was actually you who separated the brains from the soul at first. Then you came back and you said that the soul is the entire body. You also said that that it's attached to our bodies and that they're not separate. You've also said you believe in an afterlife, which I would have presumed prior to talking means that's where you believe our soul goes once we die. But you've also linked the soul to the body, meaning that when the body dies, presumably from your own words, the soul dies too. So if the body and the soul, the word has become meaningless and they mean each other, and it's just the culmination of everything, dies, which we definitely know they die, where does this afterlife take place? How does this afterlife take place?
How is nobody knows. But here's the thing. So I'm not really big into like drugs or psychedelics. There's this thing called DMT, and
I've done it.
Records and there's science that shows that you get one hit in your brain when you are born, and you get one hit when you pass. Don't you believe maybe that's the soul? Nobody really knows, but could that be it?
Listen,
what are you? I'm so sorry. I don't know what you're talking about. Like a hit in the brain? Are you talking about like a chemical hit or?
Yeah.
As far there's a chemical reaction of DMT when you're born in your brain, and there's a chemical reaction of DMT when you pass away. That's science. That's in science. So couldn't that be?
I am skeptical of your summary of it. However, regardless, if you're saying that's the soul, I have done drugs that elicit extreme chemical reactions and make you think you are communicating with something outside of your body, except for that we know they are chemical reactions and we know the brain functions that it is adapting. You're still talking about, right now you're basically saying there are these natural things that happen. Even if this is true, what you said, you get DMT when you're born and when you die, and those are the only two hits you get in your whole life naturally. Even if that is true, we're not remotely getting on to why do you believe we survive dying when apparently you also think our soul dies when our body dies too? So what survives and why should we believe it?
Dies when our body dies.
You said the body.
Dies,
you said
our physical body dies, but there's something else. There's something else with us.
Why?
We're the most
intelligent
animals on Earth. So why wouldn't there be?
Those aren't related questions. Those aren't related statements or questions. Okay. Can you agree with this statement? Some species of animal on the earth is the fastest swimmer.
Yeah.
Dolphins.
Okay. That's a physical property of an animal, and it is compared to all other animals, that is the thing they are best at. Do we need there to be any additional God that gives them that high speed swimming?
No, but God gave us the ability to swim. God gave us the ability, well, I believe, to run and do all these other things that all other animals can only do one specific thing very good at. We can do multiple things very good at, very well.
I mean, wait, hold on. What about the people that can't swim? Did God just not grant them that particular stat?
Yeah, and even God, in some way, as far as swimming, you can learn it. You can learn that trait. We have the ability to swim. Not everybody can swim due to some people are born not physically able to, or some people
dogs can swim.
Haven't learned or haven't had the time to learn.
Paco, what I think you're getting at is that we uniquely have a brain that is set up for problem solving, logic, and higher brain functions that others don't. Now, there is an entirely naturalistic explanation for why that happens and why any species that would have evolved such traits is going to have largely a greater advantage in some ways over other things. However, our species has come closer to extinction than many other many other species that lack it. For example, we are not as good a surviving species as tardigrades. There are many things we aren't as good at others, but the one thing that we are good at has allowed us to basically look out at nature and see where other creatures are better at us than things and artificially create means to replicate it. But it also took millions of years because the Homo line of species brains were growing and getting more and more advanced for millions of years. So you believe that there is this God that created us, very, very special, but he did it through this really meticulous and slow process that would have produced it on its own naturally, but all of the universe and everything was created with humans in mind, with the goal of humans, according to you, it sounds like. Whereas if you this is why I was asking earlier about, do you want to know if you're wrong? Because the questions you were asking, there are very succinct and lovely answers to, and you're just adding these levels of context on top of that you presume have to be there. And the question you asked me that seemed to be your argument is, why wouldn't there be more? I don't care about why wouldn't there. I care about why would there be more. To say why wouldn't there be a genie on Mars? That's not a good argument. And for all I know, there is a genie on Mars. And if there is, I don't want to know why there wouldn't be a genie on Mars. I want to know why there would be. So we'll try this again one more time, Paco. And then we're going to have to move on to some other calls. But maybe you just need to go back and rewatch the call, because I also think you missed a lot of points and didn't understand a lot of the questions being asked. Why should anybody believe that there is a God and that there is an afterlife? Not why do you believe, because you telling me how you feel cannot compel me to feel the same way. Why should other people believe? What is a good reason to believe in God or an afterlife?
Well, like I said in the very beginning of the call, I'm just now getting back into religion and starting to learn about it more. But as far as you got me stuck on this question. You're very smart.
Thanks. I'm much more stupid than you think, but I appreciate it.
The thing is, man, it's like, is this it? Really? Is this it? Like after this, is it just complete darkness? And is that it? Like, is that it? Really? Like, if that were it, why wouldn't everybody be going haywire and just, destroying the planet? And well, we kind of are, but if that were it, why wouldn't humans be extinct by now?
So
we've come very close to being extinct. Why aren't we extinct?
Well, yeah, but okay. So, I mean, you realize that if no if no afterlife does exist and there's just nothing after this life, you realize that makes this life infinitely more valuable. Like, it does not devalue this life.
I guess it depends who you ask, because if you ask a Christian that believes that there's a heaven or hell, I believe it'll make it more valuable for them to try to get into heaven.
Well, no, that's not the same thing as this life or this time we have here on this earth being valuable. That's right, just how important it is to get to heaven.
It's a prefix of what the afterlife will look like.
The fact
but if you remove, go ahead.
Sorry.
Well, I was just going to say, but if you remove that promise of an eternity after this life, then that shifts the value to this life. I mean, if you really were to compare the value of this life to an eternity in paradise, like what value would you put on both of those things?
Doing good, like good in general, just being good, you know?
Right, Paco, the problem is there are a lot of people who think they're doing good when they're actually doing evil and they're harming other humans. But at the end of the day, it sounds like your argument comes down to there's an I believe in an afterlife because it's a way better feeling than thinking I'm going to not exist one day, which I won't argue with that argument. To survive my death would be preferable to not surviving my death. That absolutely is true. However, it doesn't make that I will survive my death a fact or a reality. The wanting to believe something because it's a better outcome, because it would be better, is only a good thing if there is sufficient reason to believe that's going to happen. And if we were going to go with like, hey, wouldn't it be way better if this was the case? I can pick way better afterlives that have nothing to do with this Christian God, because his afterlife sounds miserable. You're literally singing his praises for eternity in most of Christianity, and I've heard Christians sing. Not all of them can do it. And in Mormonism, it really depends on what race you are and what gender you are. It will determine whether or not you have a good time in the afterlife, or you're just popping out spirit babies for eternity for your husband, you and the other wives. If we're just believing things on the basis of right now, it's you want to believe it because it would be better than if it wasn't true, as far as in relation to better for your afterlife, but you don't actually have a good reason to believe it. I agree that an afterlife would be preferable to not an afterlife, but because I would prefer that does not make it true, because even more than that, I would prefer an orgy planet that I live on for eternity over the Christian afterlife. So because I would prefer the orgy planet would not make the orgy planet real. And I promise you, I think about what that orgy planet would look like a lot, almost nightly. So yes, I will agree an afterlife would be preferable to no afterlife. I don't actually think a Christian afterlife on the basis of what heaven is supposed to be like according to the scriptures. I might not actually feel that way about specifically that afterlife. But of course I agree an afterlife would be better, but something isn't true because it would be better if it was. I need to know why I should believe it. And saying because it would feel good is not an adequate reason.
Right. I get that.
Yeah. Paco, what I think is go ahead and after the show, rewatch your call or wait for the clip to come out, because we clip all the calls during the week too. Rewatch it, really think about the questions, because there were definitely a couple that I think you might have missed a little bit, which, we talked about a lot. So, and I'm sure I glossed over some things, but go back and watch and then call again sometime with why we should believe outside of an argument to compel us to feel. You know what I mean?
Yeah, will do, man.
Awesome. I appreciate it, Paco.
Yes, sir. Thank you for your time.
Yeah, thanks for a great conversation.
Thank you. Hope you have a good night.
Bye, Paco.